Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to have all of you here as we begin this first of our series of project recipe events. I'm super excited about these because essentially it's really what we've been building up to all along. It's an opportunity to walk you through not just a project in concept, but an actual project, including all the lessons learned, tips and tricks, and where we might take it from here. And I've already seen how many one idea generates another. We now have two project clinics a month where we just spark ideas that could happen. And we have two of you in our audience today who are scheduled for project recipe events in the coming weeks. So this one's going to be very exciting. This first one is one of my own projects. This was a project that I put together myself for a gift. So let's go ahead and get started. I may have to pause as I have to pause for a moment to admit more guests coming in, but I think this will work. There we go. So I call this a map, a timeline, and a story, two ways. And I'll show you why in just a moment. So first, a little bit about the logistics of how we're going to go ahead and do these. Many of you have been through these presentations before and get the routine. I'll do a very brief warm-up of explaining how it all works. The main presentation itself will be short, about 30 minutes, and then we'll cut into the discussion. I'm excited about spending some quality time in there. We'll wrap it up quickly, and then I'll stop the recording, and we can have a little bit more of a conversation after that. If you have to go, I totally understand. No problem at all. In fact, the video recording will be available, as will all the resources, and particularly the recipe and slides right after the event. The recording will take a little bit longer because I'm dependent on outside resources to do that. First of all, as you notice, we're using Google Meet and not Zoom. That's because it's cheaper and I can keep the community free. Google Meet is pretty much like Zoom, as you would expect. I recommend pulling out the tab so you don't lose it if you happen to click over to something else while we're on the presentation. Second, if you're using Google Chrome and logged into your profile while you're there, then hold on a second. I need to let someone in. Come on in. Welcome, welcome. If you need to pop out like I just did, you don't get lost that way. So it could be very useful that way. So it does have a Chrome app that you can click an export button to get started in, and happy to walk through any of that. It's pretty much just like Zoom, except for, there's that little kebab menu to go and toggle some of the little doodads of features that you can use in the interface. And then the chat is over on the far right. One thing to keep in mind is there is no one-on-one chat. So anything you say is captured into the log. It will be in our follow-up resources, and everybody will see anything you say. So keep that in mind. So with that, the last thing, of course, is the recording. I use Google Meet, which automatically creates a video for me. It's stored in Google Drive. I paste the link for that recording into the forum as an embed, which poof, creates the video. I explain those kinds of resources, not because you're trying to do my job, which you'd be welcome to, but because I'm trying with all of these tools to be very transparent about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it so that you can do it too. And I'm very happy to help any of you see how we do these things. So that QR code or the link in the video in the PDF will take you directly into the forum. Now, I often start my presentations by reminding you, this is not a pitch because I'm not selling anything. I don't have anything to sell. It is, however, a review of concepts, and I'm very open to discussion. I've already learned a great deal from all of you, and I look forward to doing that. It's also a good place to test ideas, and that's exactly what I'm doing with this recipe. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. Family history usually begins with the stuff. In fact, as Tammy Mize put it, she's often asked the question, did you get the stuff yet? And the stuff is really all of those things. But when you peel back the layers of what is it and why was it included as something to be passed down to descendants, it's usually about the stories. So exploring the stories is what gives it context and what makes it interesting, and I'll bet is why all of you are here. In my previous presentations, which are now accessible on the web directly to anyone, under projects, there's a link that takes you to essential elements, the 5 essential elements. I've emphasized this perspective, this framework really for looking at projects, because I think it sort of shakes us free from the fundamental idea of I've got the stuff and it's my job to write the narrative. Because I think that's just a very mid-20th century way of looking at it. When you look at the bigger picture and where we live today, swimming in and out of digital media, it's you just assume that it's going to be digital first, because even if you were going to write a narrative, you probably do it on a computer first anyway. When you bring in pictures, you're bringing them in a digital format anyway. So really thinking about it in terms of these components lets you really step through what are you doing and how are you doing it, so that it's digital, how it gets to digital. And we have Kathy's Corner walks us through what those trade-offs are, how you plan for it, how you get to the storytelling from the tubs of stuff. I talk about AI fuel, which really comes down to recognizing that every function that we're running on the stuff that we do on the internet today is now fueled by AI tools increasingly. It's not just about ChatGPT. It's about the intelligence in your camera, the intelligence that is scanning something from the camera in your hand, the phone in your hand. How you're going about, telling stories. Telling stories is itself an art. That's been talked about for generations, but now thinking about how we're doing that in terms of visual stories, stories that can be transmedia. And family history, I believe, has these other 2 core components that we don't talk about enough in the media as a whole, how they're archived and that they're kept private yet shareable, so selectively shared. And I think those kinds of things are very important and a little bit different from how people talk about storytelling in social media or something like that. So in what I'm doing here, I think of these as recipes. Recipe in the same way that polenta might be a recipe. What is the factor? Oh yeah, it's a 4-to-1 ratio. Everything else is a variation. How much cheese? What kind of cheese? Do you put cheese in? All of those kinds of things are ways to think about it. And that's why I like to think about it in terms of a recipe. And I cover here a lot about the what and why, but also a whole lot about the how, which highlights the kind of unexpected lessons and the things of where you're going to take it from here. So in this case, the project that I wanted to focus on was really a gift. It's a gift of connection. I don't have it here because I gave it away. It's a framed photo of a collage, essentially, that I created. But my purpose was I took it to my brother when I went to go visit him this summer in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which is in the Atlantic side of the Albemarle Sound, which goes deep into North Carolina and actually what historically was called the Dismal Swamp. I wanted to show what our family connection was to this area because he had no idea. I didn't really either until I started looking at it. But I also wanted to create something that wasn't just a, hey, look what I found out, but also create a gift that could belong to his house, that our family, as we have many visitors visit his house, and especially his kids, now grandkids, could explore this to start on their own journeys to understand our family connection to that place. So that was my goal in going about it. And I talk about doing this 2 ways, because one way was a physical object, just a framed piece of art. The second was to put a QR code on that piece so that I could pick it up. Anybody could pick it up with a phone and go and engage with that material. I put the QR code in the artwork itself so you can scan it right there. I also, for backup purposes, made it nice and big with a little basically presentation statement that I printed into a piece of paper and slapped it on the back of the piece. So again, it was prepared for, you can't see that there, my brother's name, blah, 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 what it would do, and how to use a QR code, because, not everybody knows how, and I wanted to be able to explain that. So how did I go about this? Well, I knew I had a goal. I knew I had a few artifacts. Many of you have seen me hold up this book on more than one occasion, but many families have these kinds of written pieces. Maybe it's just a typed pages and a eight photocopy generations of such pages. I had a few artifacts like photographs, and enough of a hint that I could go find other stuff, family tree bits that other people had researched with dates and histories behind them. Was it perfect? Probably not, but it's a step. In fact, it did help me discover a very specific and important error somewhere in there. I have to go do some more research on. The hint was that our family has a strong Quaker influence. I knew that because every now and then my mother would make references to Grandmother Parker, who seemed very stern and so on, and these Quaker this and that, but I never understood what that meant exactly. Quaker communities had left a legacy in the Albemarle, I still have trouble saying that, Albemarle Sound area, and the book my grandmother wrote said so. So that was my evidence, and I took that as a hint. So I dug into some of that research. This is the kind of hint that I had from her book to be able to go in and explore it. And, as is often the case with this kind of prose, and you can see a little bit of it here, she is referencing some of the books and materials that she drew from, but it's a little weak on overall narrative and the feel for the space. But she was trying to articulate the research that she had and what she knew. So I could peel back from this and start to explore it. So in putting all of this together right there, it gave me a very clear first lesson. And again, my background is as a product manager, where you want to bring a product to market. So I tend to think that way. A lesson that I've always used is start with a goal. Know what you're trying to accomplish and then work backwards from there to what you have to do. My goal, for starters, was this gift, but it was also this gift that I could actually get done in time to get on the plane to get there. So that forced a timeline, which, surprise, was tight in what it had to do to do that. Realizing that I wanted a digital link that was accessible to everyone and that was useful and interesting, then also forced some constraints on how I implemented it. Simple things like I wanted to reuse a frame I already had. Was actually turned out to be useful. While it constrained me, it did force me to not just sit around and think about the world of the possible. It just forced me to just go ahead and get started and make it work with this. So before I get too far, you'll notice that in the materials that I used, and even this slide, frankly, the image itself is blurry. Not because it has to be, but because I intended to do it. It's private. This is my family story in here, and I did not want to be publishing this in all of the slides and whatnot. I can give you a little preview here in the live version that will be picked up in the recording. That click was as if I had taken it from the QR code, which takes it straight into the Canva interface. This is Canva interface in my own account, so I'm going to be a little bit careful, even though this is a copy. I created a demo version. I can talk a little bit about that later. In Canva, when you want to be able to navigate around, if you hold down the Command key on a Macintosh and use your zoom, you get very quick zoom in and out of the details of the piece. And you can see from here, this is going straight to those same pages of the book. I have all kinds of interesting content here, including some of the reverse of that photo, the context we have of this photo that she referenced elsewhere in the book. This, I now have the detail on who this was, and I know from other parts of the book where it fit in the timeline. This is a map I pulled out of the Library of Congress. My brother's home is right here in what's then called the Sand Hills. Today it's called the Southern Shores, Currituck Sound, and this takes to Elizabeth City, which we did get to visit while we were there. A bay or two over is this small town of Belvedere, which, as it turns out, I discovered by exploring this. You can see it here as I scroll in and out, which of course you can't. Well, actually, you almost could see. Yeah, there it goes. You can see the details that describe the history, a lot of stuff about the building. Yes.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. We're still seeing the slide, I think.
Oh, dear, it doesn't go there from here. Thank you for saying so.
I don't know if anybody else says it's just Kathy. It could be me.
It is. No, I understand what's happening. Hold on a second. I have to share a different window. Thank you for saying something, though. I can share my entire screen. That's what we'll do. There's going to be a little bit of an echo here as I share the entire screen. Hold on, I will make my Google Meet go away. You see that? Yeah? Yeah. We good? Yeah. And now as I go from here, it launches into Canva, just as if I had clicked the step into Canva. It's a little confused because I got multiple windows open of the same thing.
Yeah.
There we go. And here's where I was. Yeah.
You're seeing your Canva screen now.
Great. So this is, let me do that zoom again. So this is that same piece. As I said, you were seeing it in a slightly blurry version because I'd made it blurry because I don't want to be publishing it as the detail of my family story. But here are the way I handled highlights to go around to different parts of that family tree and map and where the town is. And this is actually a historic registry of National Register of Historic Places. And, there's fabulous detail in here about the building that a great grandparent had, including some of the detail about the separation of ownership and how some of the Quakers moved out of the area in protest to slavery and those kinds of things, which is actually one of the things that I really wanted to research. Finding this and being able, in the production version has a QR code down here so they could get straight to it. And finding that made it fun so that anyone in the family could explore the picture itself and actually add comments as well. And that's what I was trying to accomplish with the two ways. So you're still seeing my slides. So as I said, the constraints of the frame and then using Canva and then using QR codes to link forced certain restrictions on me in terms of how I go about it. Hey, that's just like deciding to make polenta and you're stuck using corn. It's all in how you're going to go about it. These are links to articles about using Canva and about using QR codes. So 2 recent articles I've published on our site you can take a look at, and I'll have links to these later. I also, by the way, have some new tutorial Tuesdays from talking to many of you. I've heard that this kind of detail would be helpful, so stay tuned for those. The first one is actually next Tuesday, specifically on QR codes. So the second lesson I had, the first lesson was start with a goal. The second lesson was to just keep it simple. Storytelling in a visual form is not the same as a written narrative. That's really, it's hard to understand that. But if you think about it in terms of flipping through a magazine or even flipping through the web, you start to realize how that's true. And I think we're more aware of that today than ever before because we're living in a very visual a world that's very full of visual media. So often it's about subtracting. When you show a chair, you don't have to say the word chair on it. We know it's a chair. and oftentimes we can explain a lot of context from the nature of the chair and the room and the lighting and all those kinds of things. So the second is, as you're producing something this way, make sure the resolution is as good as you possibly can. In this case, I was creating it in Canva and then exporting it to create a print. I used a photographic print, not a computer print out of my computer printer here at home, so that it would be very high resolution. I was very happy with that combination. I used, partly because I was constrained on time, I used a local photography processing site here in Berkeley. They're the kind of high-end people that serve ad agencies and things like that. So that worked out very well, and they were able to do it for me overnight, which was also good. The third lesson is frames are hard. Physical world is really hard. Things like getting the form factor right, the aspect ratio right for 8:10 is not the same as 11:17, and figuring out how to exactly get it to fit right is actually harder than it might appear. I go into some of that in the recipe itself, but getting a good frame took a few trips around town to try to find the right place with the right mat board. Taking something like this as a project and thinking about it in terms of my 5 principles, making sure that privacy and archiving are taken care of, is, again, not obvious and easy. What I did was make sure that the output, which was a high quality print, is archived. Treat it like my photographs with metadata and all. And also constrain when and how I share that. It's not ideal, but it's something. And ditto with the electronic version coming out of Canva. That is a Canva specific platform, although all of the content that's linked to it is not. Those are all just standards-based interfaces and components, just happen to be accessible today from within Canva. So, sometimes you make compromises in order to achieve a goal. So you do the best you can. Privacy, this link is not public. I've not shared this link in any of the materials I have here. You can't get there from here. And that's intentional because it's family. If family shares it outside of the family, well, you shouldn't have done that. But, it's not the end of the world. There's no birth dates in here for any living people. So again, you do the best you can. And those are the decisions that I made. That's what made sense to me and was reasonable. So that gives you a sense of the overall project. I have the recipe with more detail than you may have cared to know. Will be published in be published in just a moment after after I take the slides offline. But let me give you a quick highlight of some of the events coming. I already mentioned Kathy's Corner and my project clinics. On September 28th, our own Anna here will be talking about dress your ancestors, a phrase that she's used a bit in the past, talking about telling that fuller story about your ancestors and how she's done it with some of her projects in Sweden and the UK. Next month, starting on the 3rd, I have, as I said, the Tutorial Tuesday. And then on the 5th, we have Carrie's Family Trees and Burls, talking about an ebook, a child's teaching ebook that she's prepared for her own kids. So I'm really looking forward to those. This is the recipes and materials that I'm talking about. Give me just a half a second after I take the slides down, and that QR code will be live, and it will be, how does that work? Give me a second, and I'll put it right back up again so that you can get access to the materials while we open up the discussion. All right, so let me do that. Stop the share. Make that go away. Stop presenting. There we go. And we can open up the discussion. Do we have any questions? And you have to take yourself off mute because I can't do it for you. That's just the way this system works. All right, then. I'm going to suggest, I'm going to pick on you two, Anna and Carrie. Do you want to have any initial thoughts based on what you've done on your own projects? Do you have some questions or thoughts?
I have thoughts.
Go away. Go for it.
I love this. I really do. And one of my thoughts, of course, is completely selfish, and that I've been doing some work for it's really the men in my dad's family is the tracing of my maiden name is Schultz, of the Schultz name. And the reason I've narrowed so much is because it's gotten to be overwhelming to manage. And I was going to try to have something together for my dad for Christmas, but there's just no way for me to do that. But now I'm looking at your project thinking there is a way to do a slice of it for him for Christmas with what I have so far and still make it a really cool thing. And he's 83 and I hope he lives to be 103, but that's always in the back of my mind. I don't want to hold on to all the family history work for so long that some of the people who really care about it are no longer with us. So that's really honestly what I was thinking is how can I copy what Barbara did? Because I think it's fabulous. And it gives a visual, something that goes on a wall that particularly for my parents, I think will matter to them because they're not an all digital set of parents. They do digital, but it's not their favorite mode. They still want the grandkids to call them, not text them. Yeah. And so this type of visual is they can go digital with it, but they also can just enjoy it as a visual. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. That's great. You know, as a matter of fact, I even saw this with my brother because it shows a work in progress. It presents itself as a work in progress, especially as a gift to an elder. It says, and you know more. This is just little old me. I know you know more. And here's the QR code for those even youngers to get engaged with it because we're going to carry it on. And I think that's the message. That is the message that we're trying to get across. Not a message that says, I know everything. I have studied everything. I have the definitive story. Here it is. Boom. Because no, you know, it just isn't. And I think that takes it to the right tone. I see some of you using your phone. Thank you to hit that QR code. That will open to probably your login password for your forum access. And it should take you straight to the post that I just sent up because I created a new topic. Does it work? Yes? Good. Thank you, Anne. To the new topic that has all of the resources. Somebody else had a comment. Go ahead.
So I thought it was interesting because thinking back, when my brother got married, they got married in a place called Huvudsta, outside, just in the outskirts of Stockholm. And they said, oh yeah, it's so interesting because we feel connection because we live just across the water inside Stockholm, and my wife works in Huvudsta. And I just looked at him and said, you know, you have much more connection to this place than you think. Did you know all these people were born here? I now realize that I can, because that was something that I verbally told them and wrote down, but I now can get ideas of how to try to make it easier to access for their children and that generation. So the nieces and nephews and their cousins and stuff like that, and then their children in turn. So because I have sort of the maps and all that already, it could be an easy way to either have a project on its own, very simple, or to go with what we talked about yesterday.
And this was in the clinic yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we were trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah, which is about building a project that is aimed at sort of 8+ and teenagers, where you use scavenger hunts and escape rooms type and quizzes, problem solving, with or without clues and or things, and where they collect things once they've solved a problem, and that way get them interested in family history.
I love that idea. You're gonna do a recipe on that. It's just a matter of time. You don't have to do that one right away, but that one's coming. Kathy, go ahead. You had your hand up.
I must unmute myself first, and I'll lower my hand. I had a question, actually. I'm curious, and I know we're all from all over the world, so I'm not sure how helpful this is. Where did you get that printed?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, to you. Your project that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I'm in Berkeley, California, and initially I went to an online print place, but the turnaround time was going to take a week or more. And so I'm like, come on, this is a reasonably urban area, and walking distance from me is a photo processing lab that again really services artists and ad agencies and things like that. Their minimum cost for a print is $8 per print, which is ridiculous. But if I wanted them to do a high quality job for an 8x10, I did that. They're the same people. You can almost see it in my background, and those of you who knew me from Ponga know this, but I have a photo that I've often referred to that is color of my mother at about 2, and she was born in 1929. This is a color lantern slide. So I came to them with the 4x6 glass, and I said, I need this scanned, very high resolution, and then printed. They did a fabulous job, just a fabulous job, and just handled it like curators. So they're my go-to for that kind of thing. And it just depends, $8 is a lot.
Well, and $8 is important. Like, I think that's what I was getting. I wondered where you printed it, because obviously making it as a gift, you want a higher quality than the office store would do. So it does matter. And so I'm wondering what that gives me an idea of what kind of place I would look for.
Yeah.
At
the end of the day, though, this is a gift, and I wanted it archival. It's just a print. Yeah. And I have the originals, but and I guess I'm feeling guilty because I didn't use, it's acid free but not conservator level of the framing materials. You know how that is. Yeah. We often talk about don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I face that all day long. So, there's that. Don't tell him.
Wonderful project, though. I love this. This is just.
Thank you.
And I think that I commented that Carrie making the comment about wanting to get this done maybe for her father for Christmas. That I think the other key point for this is it gets all that stuff out of boxes and back into our lives, even if it's a piece. Like, that's why I love the project thing. Is they're going to enjoy that every day. Yeah, like, it's going to be there and they can look at it and they've got more information, but it's back to where that little piece is enjoyable. So I love that. Love it. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you. I hope you all can see, and this is my goal here, I hope you can all see that this kind of project, while it lets you tickle your curiosity and go scratch at the things that you're interested in, it creates a way to make that interest interesting to your family and makes a great gift. Besides that, here's the secret. It's printing. Do it once. It's the same amount of effort to do it 50 times. For those publish in multiple places kind of things, you can go to sites like Shutterfly or MPix or whatever, FrameBridge, and upload your image and pick out the framing requirements, and they will even ship it for you. They'll even print stuff on the back for you. So, that's also an option. In this case, I was trying hard to make it be bespoke, to make it be specific to my brother and that place. I did warn him that I was going to do this, though. So it's a little bit of a working piece.
Hey, Barbara, could we go back to the image of the actual final print for just a second?
Sure. Actually, let's just go here in Canva. Yeah. You're in, can you see that? Yes, you can. Okay. Yeah, I'm here now. Uh-huh.
Okay, it's still loading on this end. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So this is just me thinking out loud, folks. But after Barbara and I originally talked about her thoughts about creating recipes for this group, I actually gathered through my mother the recipes going back several generations from my family.
Literal recipes, food recipes.
Literal recipes, food recipes, yes. And I have one daughter who really got, I guess, the genetic homemaker gene far more than I did. And she loves to cook and clean and all that business. So I was just thinking that it might be interesting looking at your image to somehow have a map behind the various, in my case, it's women, it's not always, of the generations with their picture and the recipes, a lot of them are in their handwriting, and then have a QR code for each of the recipes and give it to my daughter as a frame, and then she can scan the QR code to go to the actual recipe, but have it also as a family history print.
Exactly.
I'm just thinking out loud.
Yes, that's exactly. And you could have that QR code go to a PDF printable version of the recipe so that you can have it right there when you cook. You can have it go to your voice, your grandmother's a video of her grandmother telling the tip on making it, how to whip it together, the Julia Child show that you saw, because those are all on YouTube, where you saw her drop the chicken. I mean, whatever it is, there's no limit to it.
Well, I think my point here is that what you've done here is beautiful for this perfect, but I think it's for this purpose, but it's also transferable.
Exactly.
The concept is transferable, and I think that's what's really kind of hitting me.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And, to give you an example of how it is you get into a story when you can see it, I think of these like string maps on police procedurals. This guy was in this place and then he did that. And Canva is good, but it's not great for this. There are lots of things that I would love to change about it, and I'm going to be talking to them about that. Hope to. But let me give you an example of navigating this piece. It takes a little while to get used to moving the controls. I use a command key to zoom in. So I found this stereoscope. Is that the right word, Anne? Stereoscopic image. This is an antique at a period of time when these were a common thing. It says on the back of it, it's printed like a carte de visite in a heavy board. And on the back of it, it says Mary D. Newby, July 1876. So if I did, a little research on her, mostly in my grandmother's book, so here it points to the paragraph about her, Mary, the grandmother of Henry Parker. I now know this is Mary Dix Newby, born in 1792. They were 1792. So here she is as a very elderly woman in 1876. And now coming back again here, here she was, born in 1792. There were many friends in that part of North Carolina at that time. The Parkers belonged to the Perquimans meeting and the Newbies to the Piney Woods meeting. So people belonged to, it's like being a member of a church. And it goes on and on about who they were. So she, later it says she moved to Indiana. So this walks down to where she is in the family tree. And then it works up to, that date of that photograph. And then elsewhere I have when they married and all of those kinds of details. And then where she's talking about. So here is, this is Perquimans Perkins River, into the Albemarle Sound, and here appears to be, from other research, the place where the Newby home, the Newby historic home was, which, interesting sidebar, it turns out that it was later that Wolfman Jack purchased the home, and that was where he died, and that's where his gravesite is, if you know who Wolfman Jack is, radio personality from like the 70s, 60s and 70s. But anyway, being able to go back and forth through those little bits of history suddenly makes it interesting. That's to me what made it fun. Now I made you all go on to mute. I didn't mean to do that. Come on back.
Barbara, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Once you've got all the resources into Canva, how long did it take for you to create that masterpiece?
Well, you're very kind to call it a masterpiece. The issue really was moving it around and seeing what fits. This is a demo version, so I don't mind moving stuff around. You know, these are not directly connected on. They could be. These are little line markers that typically I just learn to duplicate one, and then it will jump. See how it jumps to that, and it'll jump to somewhere else. And then you say, whoa, that's just a mess. I don't understand what that is. Delete that and then try something else. And so yeah, it's the actual navigating around is easy. And that's what I'm going to do, by the way, in a separate talk. The talk that I'm going to do in October is about doing exactly this, some of the mechanics of navigating it, because I discovered that learning these command keys just made it much, much easier to be moving it. And to bring content in, you just drag and drop. From a layout perspective, my big aha moment was to overlay a box that is transparent, translucent. See, if I just, when that disappears, it's just really hard, it's noisy. But as I brought that up, if it's just white, then it's boring. So bringing it to a level of transparency visually allowed you to connect the larger map with the story, but not have it get distracting. And that's what I was talking about in terms of visual sense. I played around with a lot of different ways to bring in the family tree. And I actually had a whole nother version that brought in the other side of the family. And I decided that was too big a story. So I constrained it again. I constrained it really to place. And this one family, my brother's middle name, my mother's maiden name was Parker. My brother's middle name is Parker. So it makes it really clear for him how to tell that story. I'd love to tell my dad's side of the story, my Reese side of the story. So yeah, I saw a comment flip by. Go ahead.
Hi. What did your brother and his family think of it all when you presented?
They are diplomats, and he was very gracious. So he was very happy.
Did he know anything about it?
No,
No?
not at all. Not at
Oh,
all.
my.
Yeah, he has a copy of this book too, I might add. But I mean, like I said, it's not exactly bedtime reading. So, you know, you didn't know to look. Didn't know to look.
Does
only
he have a
reason-
big family?
Does he have what? Yes, he does. He has,
Big family.
he and his wife live in this home, as I said, in the Southern Shores. And well, there's a vacation house there, and they have 2 children and a grandchild and another one on the way. So yeah, it was very fun to show them. His daughter was there, in fact, telling us about the new one coming. So it was a good time, and I think it was well received. They did not hesitate, and in fact, his daughter had me email her the link to the piece that she could go watch on her own from her computer and so on. Didn't hesitate.
Great.
The technology was not the border, not at all a barrier. So I just have to do something different for Christmas. In fact, you know, we have a bunch more of these project recipe, or rather project clinic events. I'm going to start leaning in on idea of holiday gifts because, you know, I think this kind of stuff could be really
That
fun.
was a question I just posted for everyone, and you can either type, or if you don't want to come on camera, come on camera. But what kind of projects, Carrie told us hers, what kind of projects does this trigger any ideas for you with holidays coming up for holiday gifts? Because I'm making lists, so I am I'm looking for your ideas. Because today I'm here as a participant learning things, so, and I'll take any ideas I can get. I'm making a whole list already, so, but I'd love to hear if it triggered for anybody else. Either type if you don't want to chat, or chat what you think you might do with it.
So you could use this one. So the recipe I will share next time is much simpler. But the thing is, you can, and that has already been done and shared in other ways than this. But technically, I could lift it up and adapt this recipe to make it next level or next
Exactly.
Cool.
Let's explain a little bit about that, though. Anna's going to be talking about dress your ancestors, taking a picture of an ancestor and telling that larger story to clothe it, so to speak, with the background and the details to it. Each of those is like a character, a person in a story. I don't have that background behind my Mary Dix newbie. I don't really know very much about her. If I had gone in and done that kind of research, as Anna's talking about, I could then go from one of these or one of these into a video or one of these into a article about a given person. So in that sense, you can take one and link to another, and that might be a really good way to essentially create a series.
Yeah, and so I can see it be adapted to be, because this is one side of your family. There is, of course, other branches. So you would have to do it different and adapt it depending on where you do it. And you know, if you are meeting up with people in real life for Christmas, a present could be to actually do a family history quiz with multiple choice, where you let them walk around and do the quiz, and they can do it in groups so they can discuss the answers. If you want to get the digital aspect in, you can have a QR code with each question. So if they have absolutely no clue whatsoever, they can actually use the QR code that can take them to a family tree or something online that give them enough information to figure out what the answer should be.
I love that.
And then when you go through the correct answers at the later on, sort of by dinner or however you celebrate during the holidays, you can do it like a stand-up comedy act, where you don't just, you know, tell them this is the correct answer, this is how it is. You tell it as a story and make it fun.
Exactly. You know, one of the ways in which I want to turn a what if you could into a specific this is how it's done is by preparing a set of known solutions to a challenge like that one. What is the tool that you use for the questions? Well, I can think of a few, not necessarily the best, because, you know, by the way, I use a form for the feedback. I have some problems with it, but it's something that could be used. And by the way, it's free. And I want to be sharing some of these kinds of tools with this group so that we can each, you know, try to outdo each other, which is fun. Because we're going to just keep coming up with more and more ideas. And Anna, you're going to do that event. It will happen. Because I'm really persistent.
Honestly, I've already started making a quiz like that for my sister's family. So it's so my niece on my sister's side. and that is the family which is Swedish, English, and Chinese.
Oh, right.
So it gives me quite a lot of scope for the quiz.
There you go. There you go. Wonderful. Wonderful. I love that. Yeah. Thank you, Kathy. Sorry, Carrie? Oh, you're talking about your cat.
Are you seeing me wave my hands? It's because there's a gnat. I'm trying to get rid of a gnat. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I usually deal with bugs in software, but yeah. I get that. Simon, I see you're on the call. I'm going to pick on you if you don't mind, if you have a moment to respond. We talked a while back, I think in an official meeting about something that we had about the idea of playing cards. You remember that one? I've been waiting for just this moment to pick on you because I think that's an exciting example of a project. We all know the idea of 52 ancestors. And of course, I immediately went to 52 playing cards with kind of Anna's profile of ancestors and a QR code on each one. You and I were talking about this and said, well, you mean like a card game that you play, and I can't remember the name of the card game. You have a different kind of card set, and you'd already done it.
Give me a second. It's on the table over there. I'll just go and get it. Hold on.
There you go. Always
I'm
a
keeping
man
my
with a
powder
surprise.
dry in case you wanted me to talk about it at a future date.
Sorry?
I was keeping my powder dry in case you wanted me to talk about it in the
Oh, well,
future.
this is advertising.
Okay.
This is advertising.
Okay.
I do want you to talk about it at another date.
Little box.
Little box.
There's a Victorian parlor game called Happy Families. It sounds, Barbara, like you don't have it in the States, but essentially you have families like the Cook's family, I don't know, the blacksmith, or I can't really remember the exact families, but there'd be a mother, father, Mr., Mrs., Master, and Miss, and you shuffle the cards and you hand them out, and then you have to ask questions of people. Well, you ask one person, you're trying to find a card to add so you can build and make the complete set, and it has rules like that. So I designed these cards with photographs of ancestral families where I had photo, and put them into family groups, and then I found a printing company. So if you look here, that's my grandfather, grandmother, uncle, and aunt. And then you can keep going. That's my great grandfather. So I put him in a family with his wife, his daughter. And some older ones. What have we got? Oh, I love it. This is. I don't think you see that. That's great grandfather on my mother's side in his amateur wrestling gear. He was born in 1881. That's fine. That'll stand out. Oh yeah, that's another great grandparent. Obviously, you can only go as far back as photography.
Right.
And
can you show the flip side of those cards?
yeah, that's my grandmother as a youngster. So you have them named. So like here it says Mrs. Morley Davies, and it's got her details below. But then on the other side, there's a QR code that opens up a web page, so you can go and find out about them. And I made about five or six packs, and sent them to various cousins one Christmas. A few years, or during lockdown, actually, it was a lockdown project. And I found some, I can't remember what the site was. It did take a long time for them to ship, and a little bit pricey, to be honest. But by the time I'd made all these things, I was so enthusiastic, I kept going. And I think they probably get made in China and shipped. It takes quite a long time for them to come over.
Right.
But if I did them again, I'd be on the lookout for a better service. But I think I would, if I did that game though, I might quite like to make just a regular playing card pack. Actually,
Yeah,
it would be used more.
Do you have anything on the reverse side of the cards, or like a QR code
Yes, I just showed
Yes,
that. Yeah,
right.
there's the QR code on the back.
Right.
row.
So from there, you
got-
could
you
go
got-
to a
you got Jeffrey
profile of
Paul,
that person.
young man in the First World War.
Yeah.
Lovely picture of him. And then on
Yeah.
the other side, there's a QR code to take you
Right.
to his place on my website.
Yeah. Beautiful.
and-
Beautiful.
As I say, I think regular playcasts, because then people would use them more often.
Right.
This is
right.
this is a slight novelty game. It was a nice idea.
And that, by the way,
God.
speaks to what I'm talking about in terms of doing these as project recipes, because every time it's what I call your first pond rule. If anybody's ever built a pond, other pond builders will look at you and say, "Ah, was that your first pond?" Because if you built one, you're going to build more, because there was always a terrible mistake that you made. It's just how it works. And I think this is the same thing. You do one and they're like, ooh, I could have done this and this, or it inspires me to do that and that. And that's the spirit I'm trying to instill here, and why I want recipes written up of projects that you actually do. And I'm to the point that I'm willing to do the writing with your guidance. And then we can share and learn from each other about pieces to do this. Well, I want to be respectful of the time. We're just approaching the top of the hour. And I'm going to stop presenting that and welcome anybody that would like to stay after the top of the hour is very welcome to for what we call our after party, BYOB, coffee or whatever. And thank all of you for taking the time to join us. And I'm absolutely thrilled by your enthusiasm and looking forward to more of these. I know, noon party hour. There we go. Where we can take them going forward. So with that, again, many, many thanks to all of you. I'm going to put a stop to the video and